So for those of you who were here this morning, it was interesting to hear Carlo Rimini from Snow Valley saying that all of today's noise was around international. And as Robin's just said, I sort of live in that murky world of pan-European with all the issues it currently has. I mean, quick poll, how many of you have purchased online from outside of the UK? Many? Generally, good experience? Yes? Okay. How many of you have tried to return from the UK to that other country? Whoa, yes, interesting, yes. Okay, so GSI, has anybody in the room heard of GSI Commerce? Just Peter, who's my favorite journalist and writes about us. Okay, I'm allowed 2 slides to give you a little bit of background on GSI Commerce. The business was founded 10 years ago, US-based. It has grown in those 10 years to a revenue of $1 billion. We provide e-commerce services to retailers and retail brands. And we've just opened an international division a couple of years ago. In terms of scale, we are the 3rd largest traded retail websites in the US after eBay and Amazon. We have 3 million square feet of fulfillment space and around 1,600 call center seats. As far as Europe goes, we have 200,000 square feet of fulfillment space in Manchester. We've got a small operation in central Germany, and we have a multilingual call center in Manchester, which operates in 7 different European languages. The GSI business started with global e-commerce services, so we build web platforms, and we do on an end-to-end basis the technology, the order processing, the fulfillment, the customer services. It then grew into interactive marketing services through our companies True Action and eDialogue. And more recently, we've gone into direct consumer engagement by selling via a private members club retailer, Rue La La, direct to consumers. So the brands that we work with in e-commerce and marketing, if they have discounted stock, which they want to move on out of sight of price search engines, we sell that through Rue La La, which is the fastest growing retailer of its type in the US, with about 300 brands represented and some 1 million members. We have clients in pretty well all retail sectors, but primarily around apparel, toys, and sporting goods. So the area I'd like to cover today is fulfillment. And what I'd like to do is take the experience that we've had at GSI of how the real world of pan-European online delivery works, take our experiences of what retailers are doing, what carriers are doing in the marketplace, and then also reflect finally just on some of the key considerations and some of the gaps in the market. If we look at the global online market, US is the biggest player. Europe is just behind, sort of in second place. Japan is the 3rd biggest player. But if we then look at Europe in its own right, the 3 big players are, firstly, the UK, Germany not far behind, and France pretty close behind that. The other countries are material and sort of interesting in different ways. So the 4th and 5th players are Spain and Italy, which have big populations but low online e-commerce penetration, whereas countries like the Nordics have very high e-commerce penetration but very low populations. So most of what I want to discuss today is reflected around those 3 large markets. And what we've been doing at GSI is researching what we might call best practice, so that in order that we can keep our products and our offerings to the market ahead of the curve, we track what we view as the sort of best retailers are doing in each of the key 3 domestic markets, but also on a pan-European basis. And the way we define whether a retailer is a local retailer or pan-European is really if it's clearly selling in its own country and selling in other countries, but it's in its own language, in its own currency, etc., then we class it as a local retailer. If they've gone to the effort of building multiple websites in different languages, trading in different currencies, and having clear offers to a multitude of countries, then we would consider that pan-European. So the first thing we look at really is the transit time shipping from each of those three key markets. And Benelux is the other key centre which is used for pan-European fulfilment. So really no surprises there. There's a colour code match between the country on the map on the left and the transit time. So you can see that fulfilling from the UK to France and Benelux in yellow and red, standard service, about 2 days, although in the black box next to it there's an express option for next day. So generally, if you're fulfilling to Europe, no surprise, it's quicker to do that from France and Germany. The next day reach is considerably better if you're fulfilling also from continental Europe. When you look at the YouGov shopping evaluation that was done October last year, the delivery time on the website from point of order really averaged about 4 days for domestic offers and 7 days for international. So clearly these transit times are just with the carrier. The 4 days and the 7 days is the end-to-end measure. The next set of slides follow a similar format and essentially look at local domestic markets in each of Britain, Germany and France, and how some key features are being served in the domestic market, and then adds in blue how pan-European retailers are servicing similar markets. So the first thing to look at really is the post and packing charge mechanisms, and you can see here that for local delivery, there's a mix. France is different to Germany and Britain because it's got much more order value-based pricing, whereas when you look at the pan-European retailers, they're really taking what they're applying in one country and spreading it across some others. And what we've very much found is that although we can take our technology and apply it on a global basis, fulfillment very much has to be done on a local basis because the features required in those markets, if you really want to drive sales, have to be appropriate to the individual marketplaces. And we can see free delivery increasingly used as a marketing tool as well. The other big issue is around duties. Now, clearly, within the EU, we're all part of the same regime. But for countries outside the EU, basically, and we saw this from some of the stuff Carlo showed this morning, all local retailers shipping internationally basically say to shoppers, you're on your own when it comes to duty. So they're shipping duty unpaid and letting the customer sort out the mess at the end of it. There are a few, but by no means all, of the pan-European retailers who are charging customers on a duty-paid upfront basis as part of the overall transaction. So it's fine saying, postage and packing is £4 or £6.95 or whatever. Leaving the duty can be quite an issue for customers. And the quotes I've put there are direct quotes from leading retailers' websites. So of those three quotes, one of those is actually from ASOS, whom I admire immensely. They've won the Golden Chariot Award, but they're still saying to their customers, if your delivery is to a destination outside the EU, tough, sort it out. And if customers actually want to return the product as well, then that is a real quagmire. So without doubt, there's a market gap, a real opportunity there for that gap to be filled. It really turns customers off from trading internationally. We've heard a lot today about enhanced delivery options, and the latest, sort of best of them, is the one Dwayne's just been mentioning. And if you look at the different options there and then plot those against the domestic markets in the green left-hand columns versus the pan-European, you can immediately see that there's quite a disconnect between the local domestic markets, which are starting to develop pretty good enhanced delivery options for business-to-consumer deliveries, but the pan-European retailers are struggling to tap into those benefits because they tend to be provided by different sets of carriers, and actually linking up the international service and the domestic capabilities that they are finding much harder. Things like drop points, well established in France, reasonably used in Germany. We've got the packet shops of Hermes and the DHL packet shops. In the UK, it's gone much more towards store delivery. So as Dwayne was saying, people are not really taking off with the drop-off point. Collect Plus is starting to establish itself. We'll see how it goes. Whereas in-store delivery in the last 2 years in the UK has just ramped away very quickly and has overtaken the percentage in France. Collection points are an interesting alternative, and there's 3 different approaches really. In Germany, we've got the automated ones like the pack station situated there, operating successfully. France, really on the back of the old mail order tradition, has developed 3 major networks with thousands of locations, very well used. But it is retailers' own store delivery. M&S percentages of store deliveries now, I think, are over 40% of their e-commerce orders are being delivered to store because they have the store footprint in the UK. Boots were quoting incredibly high percentages of orders. I think in the peak week before Christmas, something like 70% of Boots e-com orders went to store. So that's grown from almost nothing in the last 12 months. Normally, people wouldn't talk about payment methods when they were talking about deliveries, but there's 2 key payment methods that influences what happens on deliveries. One is cash on delivery, which isn't really featured in the UK market, but if you look at what's happening has happened traditionally in France, and certainly within Germany more recently, cash on delivery is becoming a required feature of the market. And secondly, in Germany, very different payment arrangements to the rest of Europe. You can't successfully sell online in Germany if you don't offer open invoice, which essentially is sending the goods out and just letting the customer pay for it later. And what open invoice does, it effectively drives much higher return rates. So on the back of that payment method, German return rates are materially higher than they are in any other European country, irrespective of whether it's a local retailer or a pan-European retailer. The types of returns options that are offered vary as well by market, both locally and for the pan-European retailers. So free returns are highly offered in Germany in particular, and if the transaction is over 40 euros, then it's mandatory that the retailer offers a free return. But returns within pan-Europe are really difficult to execute. There's no real best practice operating yet across the different geographies as far as returns are concerned. So really, I think if we look at what retailers need from carriers, there's really quite a raft of stuff. I think the pan-European market is probably about where the UK market was and the other domestic markets about 5 years ago, and it's not really reached base camp yet. And I think that's indicative that the progress in the domestic markets, particularly in the UK, has been phenomenal in the last 5 years, particularly the last 3 years. But the basics just aren't there yet in terms of international delivery. And there's a whole list of things there, really, which need to be tackled. The capabilities are there, the technologies are there, but they just haven't really been linked up yet. So I think if we look at the key considerations, if you want to be a successful e-commerce retailer on a pan-European basis, then it's not just about waiting for the carriers to provide everything for you. I think Steve Law of Firefox was very clear this morning. He was right. It's about retailers and carriers working really closely together. So the retailer absolutely needs to know their product and sales knowledge. They need to understand the market capabilities and influence where those capabilities are going. And you definitely need a specialist knowledge for the EU countries. So you have to understand what your markets are and what those markets need to trade successfully. Some of the things you've seen on the previous slides. You need to understand how the carrier market works in those countries and how you can take best practice and apply it in different countries. And then For trading outside of the EU in particular, you need to understand the duty implications and where you want your customers to be. So I think my overall messages would be that pan-European retailing customer deliveries is very challenging. It's absolutely a market in its infancy. There's definitely substantial variances between individual countries for historic, cultural, legal, and other reasons, and they will be around for a long time. And if you ignore those, your sales will grow much less quickly. Because of the complexity, it is well worth considering the use of a multi-carrier platform, because trying to link in the solutions that you require by dealing individually with different carriers who are specialists in different areas is quite simply too difficult and will take you too long. So what I am clear on, though, is that even although the UK is shipping internationally and is doing it with all of these difficulties, you can still pick up extra customers just by saying, we will trade with people in those countries in English, in pound sterling, even if it's not quite right. But the sooner that you start to tackle some of those issues and fill in the gaps, the sales will take off astronomically. Thank you.